So the uh, Cochrane and Judkins came back with plans too, or is that recess?
No, they never showed up. So, yes, it's recessed till next time. Yeah, lots of different things. You know, I looked at the municipal planning grant, unfortunately not till like this evening.
Yeah.
Some of the names on there for like select board members I was not familiar with.
Elmore is gonna be the lead,
Okay. Okay.
so their lead. People are on there, there's a blank for you to sign, and then the back, it's like.
Okay. Okay.
If you,
Yeah, we'll have to, do we have a forum? Again, we can go. The same. Yeah. We'll phone, I think. It's not that controversial anyway. I hope not.
The controversy is how to pay for the match. For the grant, but that's a select board issue anyway.
Right.
Do we make recommendations? Because my job is like a budget job, so do we make recommendations regardless of fund and that's the select boards, just in front of the rules, like.
We do, yeah. I mean, well, we can not make recommendation if we think we don't want to. Yes, but it really is up to the select board to make the final decision. Everything. Unless they want to throw it to the town for a vote.
So yeah, I mean, I would say in short, this board would make the recommendation and the select board could still shoot it down if there wasn't money.
does everyone have a cell phone or laptop tonight too?
So, so
The survey that we're hoping to do everybody at 7, is interactive with like a device.
well, I don't.
Okay.
Sometimes I do. I don't think I need it.
I did bring my laptop. Would you be interested in using mine to participate?
What is the survey about specifically?
I have a little spiel to talk about before then, but
Okay.
because
I'll figure it out after during your spiel. So still waiting for Bruce. We could give him a few more minutes. It's not unusual for me to show up a little late, but. He does have interest in a lot of these things.
I did speak to Dylan today about the East Elmore culvert, the one that has a question mark on it.
yeah,
His belief is that that one had been done in 21 or 22.
All right, well, we have. Everybody sees the minutes from the last. Out on.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is approved to approve the minutes. Okay, so continuation. The review of the enhanced energy plan, so we start with.
So. Last meeting, the commission reviewed. The energy and utilities chapter. And Mark and I incorporated some edits. Based on your feedback, and there are a couple questions that came up. One of them was from Maxfield about, the category of larger than on-site commercial wind generation. And the regional plan breaks down wind generation by facility size as residential, commercial, and utility scale. So larger than on-site commercial is just utility scale based on that breakdown. So we removed that category from the language in the plan. Which was on page 58, I just this bullet down. And related to that, Maxfield also had another question about the section 248 process. And whether the municipal plan will hold greater weight in proceedings than the regional plan. So one reason why towns have the enhanced energy plan is to get substantial deference during that process. And the municipal plan and regional plan are both considered. One doesn't necessarily hold greater weight than the other, but the municipal plan is looked at first. So that question came up just because there was uncertainty about that category of larger than on-site commercial, and if you guys did feel strongly about leaving that category in there, or if there's any other like discrepancies between this and the regional plan chapter. The municipal plan does get looked at first in that process. That we've worked to incorporate all the feedback. And make some data updates, and the only substantially new section before you today are the maps that are provided at the end, and those are supposed to align with the preferred and suitable and unsuitable areas for development that's discussed towards the end of the chapter.
And then there's no real difference here from what we had before.
The only difference I noticed that I did flag in the narrative still is for the wind potential. Because in the previous, so that's the second map in the packet, maps being. In the previous plan, there was only like 200 acres potentially suitable and 1 acre suitable for development. And this map has a lot more acreage that's potentially suitable, so I did just want to like flag that as something we're still looking into as well.
Now, what makes it suitable as opposed to unsuitable?
Things like whether it's in the 100-year floodplain, and whether there's agricultural soils involved, hydric soils or wetlands, the whole like list of considerations.
Yeah.
On page 75 and 76.
I was out last month. Like, couple questions. Can we go, can I use that? Can we rapid fire?
Sure, absolutely.
First question on the second paragraph on the first page for the numbers, because I think it's throughout like. But the state's goal is reduction by 1/3 by 2050, and meet 90% of Vermont's energy demand for renewables. I just know like how that interplays with the Global Warming Solution Act. Because that has, I think that recommendation, like what the state has is the actual like law is that we have to reduce it by 80% by 2050, and it's related to 2005 levels, and I think throughout it references like 1990 levels as the kind of target for reduction, like time period or whatever. But since it wasn't, since that language wasn't changed, I would assume it was written before 2020. So I'm just curious if this is applicable or relevant, or if it should be the Act 153.
That language we've been using from the comprehensive energy plan, which was written 2022, I believe.
Mhm.
You're now bringing to my mind that they also may, I don't know if they're going to amend statutes, but
I think they're gonna
that
have to because they could, yeah.
it's being discussed currently.
Yeah.
So maybe we want to flag that.
Well, yeah, I just didn't know, like, because throughout it kind of says like, hey, Wolcott should do this because the state has to do this. But then my understanding is the state had to do that Act 153, which was different than this one, like, because this says 90% by 2050. And I believe it's 80 by 2050 for that act. I just don't know if there's, it's just using like a different standard. But if that's the standard, I just want to make sure those things are kind of aligned.
I guess I would need to confirm whether this is referencing the statute versus the comprehensive energy plan.
Gotcha.
Because
Is the comprehensive energy plan like binding or anything, or is that like a sort of
goal set.
aspirational? Because my understanding, because one makes sense, like you actually can sue us if we don't hit those targets. So I know that would seem
Yeah.
more kind of serious, since it's like we'll get in trouble if we don't comply. So I just want to note that just because that seemed unclear to me.
Okay.
And then on numbers on page 60, like the old versus new, because it says, I'm just trying to figure these numbers out because it has like of all residential energy used in Wolcott, which is about previously 208,000 million. So that reduced to 1.8 billion. Maybe it's just the fact that like we changed like the 208,000 million was then changed to a 1.8 billion. Because that would be 2.08 billion. I'm thinking the old number, you know what I mean? By changing that, it just sort of confused me trying to read it. Like maybe I'm just not good at that sort of math. You know what I mean? Like, because we still use 3,712 million as opposed to 3.7 billion, but that first change is 1.8 billion. So maybe it's not a numbers issue. It's just I was misreading it because we're just using different formatting. That might be minor note here. So that was actually. Although on that one, like if you use those numbers, it looked like we reduced our energy consumption by 14%. I just know if that was correct. So like, man, we're doing a good job.
Well, unfortunately, there wasn't a data set available for commercial energy usage, so this is all just residential this time.
Was the previous total? I got you. The previous total included commercial.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
so it is slightly different.
Gotcha. Then like minor ones, just like I think there's just a missing letter for the word the on page 62. First full paragraph. The red highlight, it just says, it should say the state of Vermont Agency of Natural Resources owns, it just says he states. Oh, and then if we're not using commercial information, if the data set doesn't exist, we still reference commercial consumption on page 63 because it says there are 14 commercial institutional establishments. They consume about 11% of the space heat energy, but I don't think we'd be able to say that's true if we don't know the current data set.
Yeah.
And then just a question, I guess, for the group on that last paragraph, as the use of electricity transportation is increasing. Then this is as of April 2017, according to this thing. I think you used the term Mason somewhere. Like, because I was just reading that, like, there was a study in 2017 that found that we weren't doing a lot with electronic vehicles or electric vehicles, electronics, RCK. But then it's like, but that was 7 years ago, and I think the state's come a long way with EV incentives and things. So I just didn't know if like that's useful as a data set, because I think a lot of towns would have the same sort of, you know what I mean? It just seems like a long time ago in the world of EVs, but and I don't think it's wrong. Like in 2017, they did say that. It's just isn't material to how are we doing with our EV usage, I guess. And then do we ever explain energy burden? Just because it's used, but when it's introduced, it doesn't have a definition. And I think I went on like that PSD maybe presentation and I was able to kind of like infer, I think. But I think it's relative, like the energy cost relative to your income. I don't know if it's more than that, but if we use the term and say like, hey, we have this, like Wolcott experiences, this is page 8 of the PDF, transportation, PDF 64, second paragraph, just saying that according to the report, Wolcott experiences a 6% transportation energy burden, slightly above the scale of transportation 4%. But it's like, if I don't feel like I know what energy burden means, so I don't know what that number does.
Okay.
Oh, it was the only thing I saw that on page 65 for that equity and energy transitions. I looked at like the PSD document that I think this comes from. Like I think they had a working group probably, and that was deliverable from the work group. And this is like a good synthesis of what these things are. But like, I guess it's not concerned, but like in the distributive equity, like it said to consider these things. But then in the PSD document, it seemed to also like recommend or require, I guess, depending upon how this is utilized, like the externalities of our energy consumption in other countries. And I was like, I don't know, are we gonna do that? Like, that just seems like a lot. And I just didn't know like if we're referencing the document and then the language we have doesn't include that, is it like, is it in any way saying we are doing that, even though it's not? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. That's it, I guess it. I don't know what kind of question, I'm not sure what kind of question that is. And then there was language on that fourth one, the corrective equity, where it's like, I wasn't sure, it seemed to imply that someone would be held responsible, like there needs to be a clear process to hold decision makers accountable. And I was just kind of like curious about an accountability structure. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't want to say something in the plan that's like, we don't have a way to do or what to do, or, you know what I mean? I don't know. But maybe.
Last comment,
Yeah.
which, were you talking about targets?
Oh, well, it seems here, like it says, corrective equity recognizes the need for a clear process to hold decision makers accountable in community for equity commitments. And then it says like advisory committees, the executive committee, planning commission, and oversight board should review clean energy products to ensure impacted communities are being appropriately served. But like those two seem kind of disconnected. Like I get the second one of like, hey, we should review where we're at to make sure we're doing things appropriately depending upon the population being served. But then the first one has this thing about holding people accountable. I just didn't like, it seems almost punitive in some ways, and I just didn't know. Like, that just seems like, I don't know, aggressive or something. I didn't really understand the context of that language, I guess. If we're cool with it, we can keep it. I just like,
Those are just meant to serve as two related but distinct examples of how that could be operationalized. So people making decisions in town
Mhm.
and have a more clear process to follow. And could be, but isn't an exclusive list of people like advisory committees do. So not just the select board, but also you guys.
Yeah, I just, I don't know. You guys can tell me if you don't think the language is problematic, but like a clear process to hold decision makers accountable. But it seems like they'd be community members, right? I think. I just don't know what that means. Like, I don't know. I think of a Frankenstein scenario. I don't want that. You know, we have like the torches.
Well,
It's probably
it's
not.
not. It's not a clear
Worst
process,
case scenario. That's true. That wasn't a clear process.
like,
Maybe it's something, like in the development review or whatever, when you're reviewing a potential clean energy or whatever site that equity is taken into consideration.
No, I get that. I just don't understand some of the specifics, like a clear process to hold decision makers accountable. I just don't know what that means. What does that mean? I guess?
it could be like posting some of those considerations for inclusive town planning things on your website so that folks could look at that and maybe also evaluate the discussions and decision making, just be like, well, I heard you all discuss this, like, these are the types of things you said you'd be considering. And I don't feel like that's being met.
I just think that sounds like the democratic process, like, hey, we elected you to do things, you didn't do the things, we'll elect somebody else, but like. I don't know, it just seems kind of vague and it's talking about holding people accountable without explaining how we're gonna hold accountable. So it just seems unnecessary to me, but if it's fine, then cool.
I could look up more concrete examples for you to help elaborate on that more, or you could take it out if you feel like it's not doing anything for you.
I just don't want someone to rethink this, that we would do that, and if we didn't want to do it, it just seems like a scam, I think. Maybe we do want to do it. And then on page 67, it looks like it struck out, like, I'm understanding those tables to represent like what we'd have to do to hit the target. And to be clear, we're just replacing it with like. What it's. Like, what the projected usage is that correct? Or the cap is the limit, and then project the baseline is what would, where we're projected to go?
Cap would be the units that we would need to reach to meet our climate action plan is what I remember from last session.
Yeah.
Okay.
So baseline's like business as usual.
Gotcha.
I'm blanking on what cap is now, but that's like best case scenario.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that we had, because I was also confused by that last month, week, whatever day it was. I thought we were going to put something in that explained what the abbreviation was. Or maybe that was just something that I'm making up in my brain just now.
We did add the units.
Ah.
We should explain what that means.
I think the last thing is just on that. Page 77, it mentions that they come up with a new telecommunications plan. every 3 years, and then the references from the 2014 telecommunications plan. And I'm pretty sure they changed it to like, maybe it's like 110 or something, from like these conversations with PSD, but I think that number's changed. So I just wonder if we could update that to current telecommunications plan standards. That's all I have.
at 4 bits per second download and 1 megabit per second upload. It's not very high by today's standards, is it?
This is kind of back on that. The information's kind of old, like, it looks like PSD, that next following paragraph. I'm assuming that was like a study they did. But it was 7 years ago, and like, I think they have high-speed internet, so I just wonder, like again, that statistic is true in 2017, those were the statistics, but it was 7 years ago, and I think most of the town has access to high-speed internet in some way, so I just worry that people are walking away thinking we're still trying to get to that 4.1, you know what I mean, but we may invest fast.
Next paragraph that was gonna be speaking to current initiatives. I know Mark was gonna reach out to the Communications Union District. I don't know, Mark, have you gotten in touch with Lisa and were able to get an update on the projects and status, but that might help with some of the. That's
No, I haven't as of yet, but it's on my radar.
folks are here. Mr. Birmingham might be able to help. Get more first assessments of where. So there's, I guess, still a few little outstanding questions and others we can. Fine.
So. So what plan, grant next?
It's a little bit already a select board meeting. That meeting. Give a brief, preview of what. They'd like to. Apply for. CPC would like to help put together a useful planning grant consortia application for Elmore and Wolcott. To update the zoning bylaws for, compliance and the updates made in the Home Act. Which will include which will help create additional housing opportunities. For affordable inclusive housing, and other needed municipal zoning reforms. And, in addition to the Home Act, Act 47 bylaw updates. This planning grant could also be used to make other zoning bylaw amendments that the planning commission might be interested in, and that list doesn't need to be determined today, but could be compiled at a future meeting. So Wolcott's portion of the consortium will be up to $10,000. And the grant has a 10% match, so if the full 10,000 was requested to do home act and planning commission goals, it'd be $1,000 match for the town. And so tonight, we'd be looking for a recommendation from the planning commission to apply for the grant and authorization for Jim to sign the resolution as chair.
We have a motion. Any discussion?
The only thing I'll add from the select board point of view is that the match, we believe we're using leftover funds from some other planning or some other LCPC grant that we had some matches taken care of.
Okay.
And being that I've heard about this first, I'm not sure if I should make the motion.
Should I make the motion?
It's up to you.
What are the exact words I have to say?
What fate of those words?
Yeah.
You're looking for a motion, to recommend applying for the municipal planning grant. For zoning bylaw updates and authorizing Jim to sign the resolution.
I'm gonna make a motion to recommend that we move forward. No, yes, with the grant application that Jim will sign. That's pretty good. Does that count? There's just a lot there. I was gonna
Yeah,
look
yeah.
at it.
Sometimes you can say, you can just say that you moved what I said.
Oh, so I move it. What Tori said.
Let's do that.
Yeah, I'm famously guilty of that on the select board and I get yelled at occasionally for it.
Oh.
Michelle goes, what was that? So I don't know, whatever Linda said, I don't know.
You're right on the sticky.
Well, I'm the note taker too, so look at right here. I'm making the motion to recommend applying for the MPG and to authorize Jim to sign the resolution.
Second.
I will happily second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against, no. Hearing none, pass. Sign them. Has either completely or prepared. Okay, next on the agenda, we have the hazard mitigation plan update.
Current. Vacation plan for Wolcott is. Set to expire in November of this year. So Megan is gonna be working on updating the plan. And had a few sections that she was hoping the planning commission could review and provide feedback or suggested edits on. The first staple little packet is for the hazard risk table, and we just wanted to confirm. We have you all review this table and make sure that it's capturing still the primary hazards that affect.
That's this little one that goes from 12 to. This is for natural disasters.
It hazardous material spill.
Yeah, not necessarily natural or dam failure. What about like cyber attacks?
It's probably natural and human caused disasters.
Okay.
That doesn't even need to be human. I know you've had Zoom interruptions before. Have you had attacks on the towns like IT server and stuff?
Not aware of any.
Yeah, not to my knowledge.
They seem to be more common as time goes on.
Yeah, a fancy new flashy website.
Yeah.
Drawing them in.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only, I mean, I think it probably falls under cyber attack. The only other thing would be something like some kind of infrastructure failure. The grid goes down or things like that. We don't have a whole lot of energy redundancy. But I don't know.
Municipal services power failure.
Oh, yeah, there you go. It is there. Never mind.
There's no others to add.
For me.
Risk table. We move on to mitigation goals, which is the single piece of paper, page 28. For your review and consideration, to see. Moved, added, changed. The only, I guess, question I have is that I have heard time and time again in the select board that FEMA is instructing us to just go ahead with the repairs and deal with the paperwork on the back end, which seems counter to your second to last bullet, where we would do a temporary fix and then consult with FEMA. And that's not really a request for a change, that's just request for clarity. I don't. Should you do the full fix? With that?
Of course, I've never dealt personally with FEMA, but I know Linda has, Kurt Klein, and now Michelle. And all of the land, or all of the guidance we get from them is fix your roads, put them back the way they gotta go. Do whatever you gotta do to make them the way that they should be, build them to the highway standards. And deal with FEMA later. I don't know if that's just because they've been so overrun and understaffed, underfunded, whatever, lately.
Yeah,
Yeah, no one from FEMA has ever said that to me directly. I just know that that's language that we get.
Sounds like telling me you got a blank check. Well, sure, that's gonna continue.
Well, it's almost like getting a blank check, except for you have, when you go to do the fix, you have no idea to what level FEMA will pay. So it leaves the town on the hook.
Right.
But FEMA won't tell you to what level they'll pay until you've done the work, because they use the cost tables based on the equipment that you use and the man hours to do it. So it's, my very limited interaction with that process has been incredibly frustrating, because speaking of needing a clear process, I certainly haven't found one yet.
you're alone in that field. And I've heard from other more experienced LCPC staff. I also kind of wonder about that because it seems like if it was built, maybe even to like an older standard and you could make improvements as you're repairing it, it might be nice to make improvements and mitigate
Right.
building back.
Yeah, if we have an 18-inch culvert that's washed out, we'd like to replace that with a 4-footer where we can. But unless somebody from FEMA says that that was justifiable, we're on the hook for a 4-foot culvert at, $20,000 a piece. So this might be a question that's larger than this single document. I just,
Yeah. Can try and just clarify that bullet to make sure it aligns with the current
thank you.
process is understood. This, these, list of goals feel like an appropriate place to maybe speak about the Well River flood model and the advanced alternatives is identified in that model.
I mean, like it would be.
I would agree. Maybe added somewhere around the encourage hazard mitigation planning as a part of the local planning process. Using tools such as.
And the last document with the yellow highlight on it, starting on page 38, is the mitigation actions timeline. Just wanted to confirm the highlighted ones were completed, and then any other updates on the remaining actions. Completed when. The meeting started, Michael mentioned the third one down, and we've replacing the over 12 there on East Elmore Road is being completed. from 2021, 2022. Those two were roughly done.
Yes, they were.
Well, Town Hill was done this 24.
And Brook Road, I think we closed that out in what, 21, 22.
Something like that, yeah, it was right after that one Halloween flood that we had or something like
Yeah.
that.
Also maybe even earlier, because
That was right before COVID.
the Halloween flood was 2019. So it must have been 2021, somewhere in there that we closed out Brook Road. So on 39, annually review the culvert bridge and road erosion inventories. The select board has asked the highway department to develop spreadsheets and other kinds of inventory data on those things. Those should be an updated, I would say almost monthly. We'll have all of those things updated. I'm not sure that they're ready to be shared with the planning commission at this point, but with the select board is moving towards having a better record of those things. And then the structure near four-wheel drive, I believe we just went forward with a grant application last meeting. Didn't we approve a grant? No, we were trying to roll, we're trying to roll some stuff in North Wolcott Village, some flood mitigation stuff into this four-wheel drive project. Anyway, that's in process. Bridge, we are waiting for, we have 30% design, right? We're waiting for 50. Again, I don't remember the specifics. I know I've seen plans.
I know Megan's been working on that,
Yeah.
where. That's potential HMVP. Project.
I just know that we're talking about the bridge. I don't know how it's being. I don't know if any of that is happening.
So you could remove Wolcott Village from the municipal wastewater system lines.
This last one on page 40. Review final report from the PG fiscal year 19 partnership project, decide whether to participate in the Vermont community rating system. Is that pertaining to floodplain? Flood zones? What's the community rating system? I know we,
It does pertain to that, and I thought also perhaps helping with flood insurance rates.
exactly. So there was, this is right before COVID-19.
Yes.
And there was supposed to have been a study that was done on that. And I asked Seth a couple times about it in the following 2 or 3 years. Never really got back to me on it. That's as far as the results of it or whether it even happened.
It is kind of like a black box in people's brains.
Yeah, you know, the beginning of the pandemic was just, you know, things were, I think, not happening.
I did look into seeing if the study was completed.
Yeah, I was supposed to figure out whether it was going to save us any money. It'd be worthwhile to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never got an answer on that. Okay.
I kind of wonder about on 41, the river corridor protection laws. There was also some recent legislation about the state regulating that now too.
Mhm.
I have a memory of that as well. I think Seth had a speech about it.
That's a mandatory change to the zoning.
I don't know about it being a mandatory change to local zoning. I just know that the state will be regulating it.
Okay.
So I can confirm if it's the same thing as the Home Act and needing to update bylaws or it's just a separate thing.
It's 121 within the local zoning bylaws, so
Yeah,
like it's something we actually have to incorporate.
yeah, but, and something happened as recently as last year though too.
Okay.
So this was written 2020, so there may be even more recent.
After a couple good floods.
Yeah.
And we've been looking to move the fire station and town garage out of that spot since I've been here, so. We might have actually voted on it one time and it was voted down because there was a ton of money involved for the fire station in particular. That was decades ago. And we've had a couple major floods since then, where it's been an island. Things have changed.
We've been there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
along. Megan. And we shall share these updates and recommendations also with the select board.
Next thing we had on the list was flood resilience and economic recovery session.
I get to reveal my spiel.
Okay, this is where the survey comes in at the
Yeah.
end.
And Mark is prepared to share screen for it, if possible, but, with some of the recent, changes in the legislature, LCPC is gonna have to be updating the regional plan sections about, housing and land use, flood resiliency, and economic development. And at the same time, we also recently got a grant through the Economic Development Administration to update the Lamoille River flood model. And so it'll extend to certain tributaries along the Lamoille main stem, as well as extend it into Hardwick and down to Fairfax, Georgia. And as a part of that grant and effort, a consultant SLR will be identifying some additional alternatives and projects to implement. And LCPC, based on that process, as well as some public engagement with some of the communities along the main stem, will be writing a long-term recovery and resiliency plan, which includes all of those communities and is meant to be used for communities in the Northern Vermont Economic Development District. So we are hoping to chat with you all around this interactive survey to hear more from you about what you perceived as the biggest impacts and opportunities to move forward. Recommendations for long-term strategies around being more flood resilient in Wolcott and the region, particularly around the local economy and how goods and services are and aren't moving around. So just hearing about where Wolcott and the region are at and where you think it should go. We'll capture those recommendations and strategies in the survey and help incorporate it into the plan, the regional plan and this new long-term resiliency plan.
Cool. Making sure that everyone can hear me okay.
We can hear you, we can't.
Try to fix the picture. I gotta be looking.
And Mark, maybe you can explain a little bit more how the survey will work. Do you want a laptop to participate in it?
Do I need one or can I just voice my opinions?
I guess you could voice it. Megan's also gonna be at town meeting tomorrow. And there's gonna be a table with a paper survey.
Okay,
That will be another opportunity for people to participate. But this is a fun, like interactive one. You can log in on your phone or laptop and do. And it'll be a bit different, but you can voice it out too. For now.
Yeah. So like Tori mentioned, we're running the survey to get community input. This survey in particular was devised intentionally to be more of a discussion starter, a good way to, get people thinking about different issues and where we want the county to go. So again, I understand that there's three people in this room and it'll be interactive and I I don't expect you guys to have super diverging ideas on where to take the county, but it is important to remember that we will take your input and we'll have conversations here and then we'll bring it back to LCPC, and we'll have a lot of other people doing this with a lot of other planning commissions and select boards and things like that. And then we can compile all the hard data, as in the responses to the survey that you guys give, and then also any conversations that we have today, and we can kind of compile that and then come back to you guys with, okay, look, like this is what you guys were thinking, but if you compare that to XYZ, it brings up a whole other conversation. So yeah, I think that's just important to think about how I understand that there might not be a huge group going on here, but this is the first time we're doing this, so we're giving it a shot. Um, so I need to send a request to share screen. Sorry.
So this is gonna be something you're gonna have, like, collecting data, on. Maybe I'm gonna need a device. Otherwise, it's not really gonna get recorded or.
Yeah, it is meant to collect data, it's also meant to just like help facilitate conversation amongst you all. It would be nice if you could
Sure.
throw in.
Sure. Might have to show you how to use it if it's not an Apple.
And yes, I will also add, Tori mentioned tomorrow we're also launching a more in-depth survey that's going to be really pushed to the broad public, just to get their opinions as well. So any conversations having here is great. Any input on that survey and the survey is also great. So just helping you guys be aware of what's going on and what we're doing. Um, while Tori's logging in, I can show you a little bit of what this is going to look like. Um, so hopefully that looks good to you guys. Yes.
Yeah.
So effectively the way this survey works is it's really a presentation. We have 11 slides here. And the fun and kind of interactive part that kind of drew us to the software is that as you guys answer it, it'll populate the data in live time. Um, so again, there's not a lot of you. We already know there's going to be 3 Wolcotts on this slide, but in the other slides, it'll get a little bit more interesting, and we can also, like I mentioned at a later date, kind of pull together a region-wide perspective and compare and contrast that to a Wolcott perspective, and etc.
And so, the main way that you'll log in to participate on your laptop is by going to menti.com, menti.com, and entering that code at the top. And, then you should be able to answer the questions as they come up and, yeah, as Mark said, the responses are recorded live. It should be marked one at a time for questions, so you'll answer and have to wait for us to move forward.
Yes, I believe so. Cool.
This question is a little straightforward.
Yeah.
Answer.
Pretty sure we did. I saw the little thing go over top.
Blue orb? Is that the blue orb?
Yeah. Saw my one pop up.
There's only 2.
Yeah, only 2 so far.
Well, it says you've already responded.
Yeah,
That's what it says on that message.
yeah, mine says the same.
Do you still have all the towns on the far right of your screen?
Good.
Oh, is there a submit button on the bottom?
Oh. Oh, there is, yeah.
Yay.
There.
All right, so not for this question because it's pretty self-explanatory, but for the next questions, we'll invite you guys to have any sort of discussion at this point that you have. For this one, you all live in Wolcott, so that's great. This next question should take a little bit longer. Just looking at Lamoille County's greatest strengths. On your screen, you should be seeing up and down arrows. So you can move those up and down. And then once it's in the order that you like, um, you can submit it and then it'll kind of aggregate and average it as all three of you send them in. So I'll give you some time to do that.
I guess I don't understand how this is working at all.
You like drag. You have your options down here, and then you can click it with your mouse and then drag it up into this field, and then this is like a ranked order. So then you can slide it. Show. Yeah. So you can drag them here, like click this guy, drag up here, and then you can kind of go, then you put it in the order. And he's saying we all do a merge them on stage.
This would be a lot easier on a piece of paper. What is it? That's going way down.
Try.
Yeah, now that one of you has submitted, you can see the first set of responses, and then as everyone else gets their questions in, you should be able to see it change in live time.
Real quick, on recreational assets, that's like climbing a mountain, not pickleball, right? It could include pickleball. Recreation's just whatever you recreate on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so your assets for recreation.
Pick up that.
So how do you make them stick when you get them down?
Hmm?
So when I go down with that. Yeah. I have no idea if this stupid thing will work.
Yeah, there you go. Recreational assets made a big jump there.
So if I take this right here, I drag it down to here, it goes right back up. How do you change that?
Well, you drag it up.
I don't want to drag it down.
Well, it's not still. So you can move it up or down once it's like in there.
So I put it in there just to start with.
Like either just over the ball.
Right, well, like, all right, makes no sense. So that I can.
Yeah.
Okay,
That question especially, I didn't see what you guys were dealing with, but on the phone, it was way simpler than this dragging in arrows and
yeah,
it's just click them in the order that you thought of and.
Yeah, I also think just for us, if there's anything on here, like anything in this list that or anything that is not on this list, anything missing that you think would be important to add that you think we just totally blanked on, that would be helpful. Hopefully that's not the case, but if you have any comments or discussion points that you see here, scenic beauty isn't necessarily very surprising. Um, Recreational assets, you spoke a little bit about, that doesn't seem too surprising to me, but
I don't know, I guess this quality of life include like I feel like we live in a dream world where like our gas stations have like organic fair trade coffee, you know what I mean? And like we have like nice restaurants. I can tell my kids like this is like an actual like it's all gastropub. You know what I mean? I'm like this is like pretty good. You know what I mean? Like if you go somewhere else, it's like not as good.
I
You know?
was just thinking something like culinary experiences or whatever, but
People just have I want to say with like good taste. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like people think we're loyal, but it's like
the gas station one is huge. I mean,
Yeah.
being able to walk into a gas station that your feet don't stick to the floor is really
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah,
yeah.
and I have gas station mushrooms.
Yeah, some heart attacks included. Yeah, I wonder if restaurants is a big part of it, but also access to food. I mean, I know there's food islands are a thing. I have friends that live in Waterville that are having a 3 days camel journey to a grocery store. They may rank that differently than somebody in Morrisville.
I don't know if that rolls into quality life, like we get milk from deal, you know what I mean? It's like, that's awesome. I don't know where that rolls up to. Maybe that's like the community or quality of life, but something like that. I don't know.
No, I think, yeah, I think that's a really good addition, especially the gas station part in reference to food deserts, I think is worth mentioning. So I'm glad you guys did. Um, Up next is kind of the inverse of this question, so more ranking, so I'm sorry about that. Um, but ranking challenges and issues, which we have 10 here that you can list. I'm sure there are a whole lot more than that, but if you think of anything really important that's missing, I believe it could be added. And we can certainly write it down either way. And I also really appreciate the mentioning that different towns are going to have different opinions. Um, and I would say lean into your Wolcott-ness here, because if to your point, if Waterville is telling us something different from you guys, then that's important to know. But your expertise, I imagine, is primarily in Wolcott. Um, so don't shy away from that.
And this is owing to my ignorance on like electric grid capacity. Like I tried to read it in that chapter and I did read it, but it's a little bit eyes glazed over. Like, is there any linkage between the electric grid capacity and renewable energy generation? Since I'm assuming we have to have. Is it the capacity in reference to like existing, you know what I mean? Like are those interrelated? You know what I mean? I think they are. Like if we make more energy, we'd have to have the ability to uh distribute it, I guess. I don't know. You know, is that correct? I don't know. I mean,
Anecdotally, I talked once about putting solar where I live and was told by Brian at Hardwick Electric that they would not approve a solar project that was grid tied because they didn't have the capacity to put that in their transmission lines.
Yeah, okay.
So any solar that I did at my house, I would have to do off grid, so I would have my own site storage and
Yeah.
they wouldn't let me net meter, but that was also many, many moons ago. I don't know what they've done since then.
Yeah, I think it's more of a, with them, they just don't like. That metering.
Yeah, because they received a grant many, 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 many moons ago to get all the smart meters and then never installed them because it's more cost effective for them to put an employee in a 3/4 ton truck that gets 8 miles to the gallon and read meters manually. I've had the conversation with them a couple of times about that. It blows my mind. But yes, they don't like net metering and they make it as difficult as possible.
All right. Yeah. Again, just looking at the top responses, none of those strike me as super surprising. Um, the before I move on, if anyone has anything they'd like to say, you can go ahead. But it seems like you guys were discussing already a little bit the electrical grid.
That's my only question, because that one I was confused. I felt like I had to like link them or something. You know what I mean? Because I feel like you can't one without the other. So I don't know, like. I mean, for the purpose of, I don't know if you can feedback on the survey itself. I don't know if those should be merged or something, because I wasn't sure how to like operationalize it, like. If I think that we need to have more renewable energy, then I think we need to have. The network, the capacity, you know what I mean? So they seem kind of, if you do one, you have to do the other. So I'm not sure if they're gonna be aligned, then like, what's the utility of having the two, I guess?
Yeah, I do very much see what you mean. My only thought is they're distinct in um eh, renewable energy is also on the lines of like being a green priority, like being an environmentalist, that would be a very high priority.
Right.
Whereas electrical grid capacity can also branch out into um like housing goals, and you need to have a certain capacity to introduce new housing. Um, so I think they are incredibly interconnected to your point and to the anecdote that was mentioned that you need one for the other. Um,
But not necessarily. I mean, I could have renewable energy generation. I just had to save up enough money to install, the on-site storage. Um, it was, they are connected, but they don't need to be. You could generate your own renewables and not grid tie.
Like
yeah,
that's
no, I agree.
a share of like a community solar project.
Little microgrid kind of thing, something, yeah.
Great. No more ranking questions, so that'll be good news for everyone.
Short essay, 500 words.
Not quite. Um, a little bit of typing though. We'll have a couple of these where though I think your responses will directly pop up, and some of them will be word clouds, which we can get to in a minute, I believe. Um, where if you have an option for some shorter responses, but only three of them, then it'll have a cool looking word cloud that we can kind of dissect. And if you have a longer bubble to type in, I believe it'll just pop up what you said word for word. And I also would like to acknowledge that this is kind of a lot of these questions are pretty difficult to answer, succinctly, especially. But we really appreciate the wide breadth of ideas and creativity that we can get from having planning commission members and select board members um use their brains and brainstorming. The more people who answer this, the better it'll be, and the more answers we'll see. So again, thank you for putting time in. I understand that it's quite difficult to give a well thought answer to a question like this, but we appreciate it.
I guess like what is, I'm struggling with this.
Mhm.
Like. It's like specific job types, would like the trades be a job type, or is that like too broad? Is that a type? I guess, I don't know, this is hard, I feel like.
Yes, this is very much an open-ended art project. There's a lot of interpretation.
Well, like whatever the people want. Like, but the thing is, it's like, oh, I like this, you know what I mean? It's like, record shot, their story. But it's like, I don't know if that's gonna make it.
Could even be like,
Can we just get crazy on it? Can we be like our act, like, you know what I mean, like. You know what I mean? Not that crazy, like within the question, like,
remote jobs.
yeah.
For the economy that has a lot of highly ranked recreational assets, perhaps you would like more recreational jobs that match and serve what, you know, has to offer.
That whole tourism economy shtick that really.
Well, that's what gets me nervous, because I'm like, oh, we should have some like, you know, like manufacturing, that stuff, like but we also have scenic beauty, you know what I mean? So it's like, what can we make our money on? It's like, I don't know if that's gonna last for a long time.
Yeah, I don't know, that the tourism economy shtick that keeps getting pumped, that just is a stab in my heart.
Yeah.
And
Doesn't produce anything.
I'm not a proponent of that. I don't understand how it works because I wouldn't pay to come here. I pay to live here.
We are highly dependent on that.
Scarily so.
Yeah, we like the warm winters and then like the ski industry, you know, what I mean? That seems like a potential problem.
Yeah. All these people that count on snow for their income, and then the snow stops. When we thank God for dirt bikes or mountain biking.
Yeah.
So correct me if I'm wrong, an element I'm getting out of there is just a diversification of economic growth, of not relying solely on Never mind just Stowe, but recreation in general, right?
And this is why you have a table, because you come up with the right words.
And again, to your point earlier, you wonder how other towns are gonna feel about that, where some might want to lean, and this might be a person by person thing. Some people are gonna lean really heavy into um the tourist economy that's grown here, and some people are gonna agree, saying that you can't live by one economic base. So that'll be interesting to see. Great. We can hop to the next one where this is more, I think, a little bit more specific, um, in looking at land use development. Um, and I also think this question came out of a lot of thought on people are kind of aware of what people don't want to see in Lemoyne County. I don't think people are really waiting for any big box stores, any Walmarts or dollar stores or things like that. However, those do serve a purpose, so don't feel bad if that's what you're going to write. Um, but what are the type of things that people want to see, and where would they like them to be? Because obviously the land use is a really important part of the plan.
I say now we should have that ranked, right? You know what I mean? That ranked, you know what I mean? Or like you could pick 3 words to make a sentence. I'm just like, I don't know. It seems pretty all right.
Well, I don't think these need to be like full sentences either. They could be like single words even. Perhaps. Rural or just more housing or.
This is a great
Others.
space to add restaurants like that. I feel like that's a pretty reasonable answer. Um, because that's a type of a land use. I also think there's value in these more broad brush, um, more abstract, big picture descriptions. And yeah, you can see how this question differs a little bit from the previous one, where um it intentionally makes your responses a little bit shorter and then shows them on the screen. And then there aren't too many of you today, but at the end of it all, we it kind of the things that are said more often. So if low density is a really common answer, that'll be really big. And then, if one person says they want XYZ, XYZ would be really, really small in comparison. So it's a quick and easy way to sort of visualize quickly what the county is thinking. Um, I don't know if one person did those three, if that was all three of you.
They're still working on it.
Nope, no worries.
I did something, but it's not showing up there. I submitted it. Submitted.
All right, words.
Nope.
You wanna try one again?
Not really. I'll go with those. Those are. I agree with that.
What is characteristic development of a Wolcott?
So in places like Morrisville where we have the characteristic downtown and that new building that was put up on the Hutchins Street lot, which tried really hard to mimic the area surrounding it, that kind of development, that makes sense to me. That building across from the Wolcott store would not be characteristic of the area. So I just want to see like shapes together, right? Development that makes sense together.
So sorry for pulling this. It came up, it didn't open my email. Apologize.
And I know my low density and sustainable topics, they might be kind of controversial, but they feed back into my worries about the economic structure that we depend so highly on tourism. The way that this place is built, the way that Lamoille County and rural Vermont is built, it is difficult for us to sustain an extremely high population, a high density. We're just not built for that. We don't have the infrastructure for that yet. And if the tourism economy were to dissipate, that would leave a lot of people here without many places to go to work. So that's, I said, I realize I am going against the housing goals by saying I like low density housing. That doesn't mean I'm in favor of urban sprawl. It just means that I don't see the population goals the way that most people do.
Out of curiosity, that's a very pragmatic perspective. Um, if it was purely visionary and like purely could be any way, there's infinite money in the world. Um, would low density still be your ideal future land use development, or is that not even in the realm of thinking about the issue?
Me personally, I would still, as the places around me become more dense, I move further away. My preferred method of living is in a low density setting. I would not thrive in a high density or a duplex or a triplex. I would not be able to thrive in that environment. So for me, if we lived in a vacuum and nothing mattered, I would still choose
Mhm.
low density.
Right.
But it sounds like maybe having multiple options for other people to choose
Absolutely.
how they want.
Mhm. And that ties into the characteristic development. Somebody that wants to live in a walkable downtown, there are those areas available. I mean, Hyde Park is growing again. Morrisville has grown. Stowe exists. But that still leaves these quiet little bedroom communities. where people can exist.
I think I have not submitted, as you can see, I think there's one, so it's minor, but like, cause there's like Belvedere, you know what I mean, that there's Stowe, and it's like, well, I wouldn't want the same thing for both of them.
Right.
So like whatever they want to do, I guess, since people live in Stowe, live in Stowe, you know what I mean, like that, you know what I mean, those,
Yeah,
that Belvedere characteristic projects, like,
yeah,
kind of what there is plus.
yeah, it's another, right, so now I'm dealing in things that aren't real, but one of the concerns I have with moving towards a larger community government as opposed to this individual town-based thing is that Multnomah County, there's Belvedere and then there's Stowe. What's good for the goose is probably not good for the gander. So I'm just not sure when Vermont has to move to these larger districts and cost efficiencies drive us out of this individual oversight and into a community government, I worry what that's gonna look like. And that carries into land development.
Well, if possible, I think it'd be good to move on. So if people have half-baked answers, excuse me, um, that's totally fine and acceptable. If not, I think we should jump to the next question pretty soon.
I just had an anecdote I would add. I just heard from somebody yesterday that works on the mountain. And it took him 1 hour to get from the base down to Stowe. So I'm just thinking, whatever, high density, low density, it's intermingled to some extent by the workers that have to go there for traffic at least.
Sure. I think we'll jump ahead. Hopefully you should still be able to go back and add anything after the fact. If not, that's a shame. More broad brush. I would also add, especially for a group of planners, we have a slightly different version of this question that was written up for the larger survey on thinking more about policy base. I mean, everyone would like to see more houses, so simply saying build to this question seems like a pretty good answer. But things like regulations, where they should be, where they shouldn't be, tax breaks, tax credits, things like that. So knowing what, in this case, the Wolcott Planning Commission sees as a good response to the housing need on that front, rather than simply building, is more so the type of answers that we're looking for.
What's the current state of housing in Lamoille County, would you say? I mean, do we have enough housing? Do we have not enough housing? And certainly you observe a lot of housing being built in Morrisville.
I would believe, Tori, correct me if I'm wrong, the general consensus is that there is a shortage. I wish I knew more of, there's the housing report that we have. Tori, I don't know if you have any memory of that more specifically.
The Loyal County Housing Needs Assessment.
Right.
Perhaps you've read,
Yeah.
I think. More opportunities for affordable options for folks that they wanna.
I wonder if there are a lot of vacancies in the expensive housing area. Are they overpriced and or are they just full because everybody has enough money to pay for the more expensive housing?
I went and looked at 5 different units managed by Down Street Housing combined between Morrisville and Stowe in their low income housing. They've had 5 units vacant for over a year in the low income. Which makes me wonder how much of the shortage is due to applicants, how much of the shortage is due to how much of the shortage is manufactured? 5 units only one of them being a single bedroom, that's a lot of housing for Lamella County. And that's just in the units that I was shown from downstreet housing when I went and looked at the work. So I don't know. I don't have an answer, but it does make me curious.
I think that question comes up for me too, in Wolcott, because should Wolcott build housing? If there's an ample amount of housing in Morrisville, maybe it's easier to live in houses there than it is in Wolcott and Travel. You know, is it imperative that we add housing in Wolcott itself?
Makes me wonder, like, were they 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom?
Right, low incomes, I guess would be.
Yeah,
It's always feasible.
one unit was a 1 bedroom. The others were, there were 2 in Stowe that were 3 and 2 more that were 2 bedrooms. And the units all needed, the anecdote, the 5 units that I looked at, they all needed work, but I was the first contractor to look at them in the year that they've been vacant. And one of them just needed turnover paint. They just needed somebody to literally paint the walls and then they could rent it, and that unit had sat vacant for a year. In a pretty desirable neighborhood in Stowe.
So my answer, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, maybe more robust marketing. I mean, of existing opportunities, or like, well, might be a response to that.
Yeah.
So my answer to this is off the cuff. I think we should figure out, do we need more housing? Do we need less housing? Do we really know what the housing needs are in Lamoille County at some deep level? You know, we look at the surveys and such things, but wouldn't it take more study to really figure out how to respond? So I'd say study it some more. You don't respond, if you really don't know, then you can't respond without knowing more about it.
So in answering this survey question here, how should Lamoille County respond to its housing needs? We're supposed to type in just like one word?
I think it says like 25 characters. So
Look at 200.
Yeah, you can
Oh.
go, you get like 1.5 words for 25 characters.
that one might be a longer response one then.
Well, I don't know. I'm just kind of wondering, I just want to make sure I'm doing it right.
Yeah, this slide has an opportunity for 3. It's another one of the word cloud ones. We have the opportunity for 3 25 character limits.
Right, so basically.
Really? That's 2 words.
Maybe 2 words.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, I mean, knowing that feedback is also helpful, that it seems like you guys would appreciate having more space to elaborate.
Type out a sentence.
It does have like a 200 characters, like short answer response for this one.
It does?
Oh, okay.
Where? On a slide or something? Yeah.
Actually, can respond to what it means.
Yeah, I can go all the way. I can go many paragraphs.
Yeah, how was the survey designed? Because I have the 3 short answers. Or
So I have-
Look at that mobile experience, buddy.
Yeah, I can request a desktop site, but I don't know how much it's gonna change.
Potentially you guys are on, excuse me, still on the last question.
Get to the next one.
We should confirm if there is desktop versus mobile differences, because they do have 2 different options.
Oh, really? Oh, wow, okay. Okay, I think the discussion side of that was helpful.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, I guess, yeah, because to Bruce's point, like, I think everyone's gonna have their own assumption of what the housing need is, and then based on that, make their own assertions. I don't know if there would be like here are some statistics, you know what I mean? Like, if there was something that said, this is the state of housing or this, you know what I mean? I'm just going to like, I think I have a pretty good idea, but like, that's my idea. I don't know.
If we have a recession here, there is gonna be no housing shortage. Everybody's gonna move back in with who they moved out from.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to your point, you know, build being the answer, okay, how, where, you know, and who pays for that? The average per square foot new build in order to meet the 24 Arby's is averaging around $400 a square foot.
Yeah, that's just crazy.
It's insanity is what
It's
it
that,
is.
it's completely unaffordable.
That's the average, in order to meet the current RB standards. And now they've upped them where you've got to do blower door tests at the dry-in phase, at the finish phase, you have to have an ERV. You have to have some kind of foam or continuous exterior installation. I mean, I understand the reasons that they're doing that. We have some pretty aggressive climate initiative goals that we need to meet, and we should be being efficient. But efficient at what cost? I mean, none of the, and I'm getting off on a rant here, so I'll stop, but none of
Don't
the,
stop.
none of the RB's goals, none of them talk about the embodied carbon. You know, which is what has pushed us all away from spray foam between that and the off-gassing that the UK is dealing with now. But, you know, we're talking about trying to create. You're talking about, you know, trying to move towards wood fiber continuous exterior insulation, but the R values are less than per inch of, so it feels like it's lacking balance. Everything in the residential housing sector feels like it lacks balance.
One of the things that I worried about before is, or I wondered about how many existing houses are there in Wolcott? And if you build 10 new housing units, so it seems like you have to take care of your existing housing stock before you think too much about make it livable, make people live together, I don't know, but before, share homes, before you start building new buildings, people don't think of the existing stock in terms of temperature, you know, climate control, whatever. It's a huge number of houses that are out there that should be thought about in terms of overall housing.
They're all grandfathered, to fix anything.
Unless you change a window.
Well, don't change your one.
And and so, again, I gotta get off this thing because everybody else has got a life and no one wants to live this the way that I do, but. No. So because the current system is set up as punitive, not positive, right? So technically speaking, if I'm hired to come change a window in an 1860s Victorian, not only do I have to, but all of my guys have to pass a lead cert. It's a $400 class and I gotta pay them for the day. So, and it's not just me that takes it and I manage the site. It's all of us. We all have to go and take this class. And that's just to perform work in a house built before 1970. Then if I change a window, according to the RBs, that window and the change needs to be recorded with the town clerk to have that energy file. And again, window, I'm dealing with thermal envelope. I come in, I replace a broken window in your house and I need to have a blower door test done. Technically, you know, it's a $4,000 to $5,000 expense to get these energy audits done. Unless you, the homeowner, claims to be the GC on the project and you hire me just as labor, and then you have to attest that you elected not to for whatever reason.
Only when you sell it.
But the law states it's got to be filed with the town clerk. So when you go to sell it and those files aren't there.
Just when you sell it, though. That's what I was reading on it.
Yeah. I think that line of thinking is going to be problematic because I think real estate attorneys are gonna have a field day with that.
Yeah, let's do
Anyway, I mean, you guys don't want to listen to me complain the rest of the night, but I'm telling you, I could get started.
No, but,
Go for it, Michael, it needs to be discussed.
No,
But is this the?
You know, plenty of discussion doesn't hurt.
I agree, and I again I can do my best to aggressively simplify the discussion I'm hearing. So I think on one hand, you have the revitalize and advertise existing stock because that seems to be an issue. But then also with new builds being able to reassess the environmentalism versus economic, balance also seems to be a good another big issue brought up. Um, I don't know if you guys agree. If you do, um, then whipping something up and having it in the survey would be great. Um, if not, feel free to use your own words and kind of shape what I did my best to simplify.
I
into what
was
you're
going to type in, I was going to type in that we should encourage, incentivize people to be able to rent their houses out or to do home shares. Because
Mhm.
right now we have nothing but disincentive. The way our property taxes are calculated, you have to count everybody that lives in that house and all their income, regardless of how much you're charging them, or even if you are charging them. It's really a disincentive to share your home space.
There's a big old house right down the street here that has an apartment that's almost finished. A big house, one guy living there in a little room. I talked to him about sharing but he'd have to spend a little bit of money and then maybe he'd have to have all kinds of regulations to finish up that apartment.
And the other piece of that is the way that the state structures their wastewater based on bedrooms and non-occupancy for their on-site disposal has never made sense to me. Talk about that. I think I know that you're talking about the Randall House. It's
No, it's Michael Overdriscoll's
Oh.
house. He's got a good sized apartment there that hadn't quite finished.
Oh, I didn't realize.
He hasn't done anything with it for years, but.
So the Randall House is a 6-bedroom, 6-bath
Yeah.
with a currently grandfathered wastewater system as of the bedroom count on the Lister card in 2007. And last I knew, there was, the previous owners, it was just 2 of them. So when municipal wastewater makes it to Wolcott, if they want to retain their 6-bedroom status, they're gonna be paying for those units and theoretically not using them. And then to your point about how it's punitive, if they did want to open that up as some kind of long-term or short-term home share, there's all kinds of permitting and fees and regulations and things and lighted fire escapes and ladders, and the list goes on about how much it takes to try and legally playing by the rules is expensive. It's incredibly expensive to do things correctly.
It's my opinion that this entire housing crisis that we have is self-created.
Regulated ourselves into a corner.
There's more houses in Vermont than there have ever been by far, and there's hardly any more people.
Well, a divorce creates 2 housing units needed typically, so, it's great for the economy.
I think if you guys could please do your best, because again, I know it's difficult, especially with the character limit, to really, really shorten everything you just talked about into 1 or 2 words under 25 characters. Good luck.
AI will do that for me.
Yeah, if not,
ChatGPT first.
if not, I understand, and that feedback is also helpful for going forward, that this can be a longer style question. But we can move on to our next question. Which if I recall, affordability was a top 4 challenge that we saw. So this gives you an opportunity to kind of dig into that a little bit more. You can pick your top 3 biggest challenges for affordability in Lamoille County. And again, if we're missing anything at all here, please feel free to bring it up and we can write it down and keep track of that.
So this is overall affordability, not housing affordability?
Well, that's one of them.
Overall.
The choices are heating and cooling, childcare, transportation.
Oh, okay,
food,
yeah. I haven't seen that.
Medical expenses and taxes.
Okay, so a whole collection of affordability things.
Choose up to 3 responses. Like clicking. We don't have this on Apple computers.
Yeah, you do, yeah, I'm sure you do.
No, do not. I always.
Michael, you probably know, like 2 fingers or a double click or something.
If I touch this side on my Apple computer, it does the same thing as if I touch this side.
Try 2 fingers.
No, I'm not screwing with it. Just metal.
Or tap. Oh, main challenges, jobs.
You chose 3. I gotta sum that.
Community.
Yeah, so it looks like taxes are the biggest challenge that this group has noticed. Nothing for food, as you guys mentioned before, that might be a town by town issue. Well, a lot of these will be. And none for transportation or home heating or cooling. But again, I don't think any of these are particularly surprising. And I think they would absolutely change town by town. If you guys don't have any quick comments or anything, so we can keep moving along.
So what's affecting our affordability mostly? You just take some random person up there, transportation costs, cost of that great big pickup truck. That's an affordability issue, high interest rates, these people are paying, they come in with negative equity and trade their car, so you owe $5,000 in order to trade that car in because of the loan, so that's an affordability thing.
So that's a choice.
Some of it's a choice, some of it's financial literacy. I mean,
Yeah, all of that, but it's definitely affordability.
It's also like how much money I spend on gas, having to drive an hour to my job.
Mhm.
It's,
Gas is really cheap though.
depending on the year, make and model and fuel efficiency of the vehicle.
Right. But
They
you can,
pay
I
more
mean,
than others.
you see people pay more for water bottles than for the equivalent amount of gas.
Yeah,
$3.15 translates to, a very, very low price for today. But anyway, yeah. Choices, what do you do with? Yeah.
that's the overall affordability of life.
So transportation is expensive. People drive to Stone. The local jobs helps that.
All right, we can move right along. Looking more at flooding events, but also climate change in general. You know, it hasn't affected necessarily Lamoille County directly, but things like forest fires and heat waves definitely have affected Vermont more as of late. Things like that are also things to keep in mind, but obviously flooding will be on the top of everyone's mind.
We should push for some kind of a tax on emissions, on carbon dioxide emissions, so. Tax it.
I know there's the state's been working on not creating but researching a cap and trade, cap and invest program, which would be pretty similar to that. And again, I can't tell what style of question this is, but if you're struggling at a character limit, that's valuable information as well.
Let's go to 200 characters.
Sorry, I missed this whole thing. Are you filling it out online today here? Because we should be doing.
Yeah,
if I mean, if you don't
Bring
mind,
one
like,
in, I was
yeah, I
touring
think,
a few
next
experiences
year.
in that area, struggling.
then we fill it out after.
There will be a paper survey available tomorrow at town meeting,
Oh,
but
okay,
if you have your phone now, you can
Okay.
log in. later.
great. Kind of two different issues, aren't they, with the recent increase in flooding, that's kind of an immediate thing, I mean, they're both immediate, but nothing you can do for the changing climate is gonna affect the flooding for another 10, 50 years or something.
Yep.
What do you want to do, Bruce?
What am I,
Carbon?
carbon tax,
Carbon tax.
yeah, yeah,
Put that-
you're putting it in for me,
Yeah,
thank
you
you.
can put your name right next to it.
I've heard you talking about that issue many times.
Carbon tax that's completely redistributed.
Put it in, yeah.
Submitted.
Not the words.
I'm not gonna go for just a carbon tax.
No, I agree with you with redistribution.
They don't like to do that.
We'll have a little bit more time, and then I think we can move on to the next one. I think these are great examples, and I think the idea that the idea is correct that, you know, you're not going to be able to solve flooding in the next many, many years, but they are interrelated, in taking climate action is both a broad brush and a very pinpointed, how can we help reduce carbon emissions, and also how can you protect
Yep.
the citizens in our county from flooding. Are we good to move on? Should I wait a little bit longer? Okay. So these are the current themes in our regional plan. You should be able to kind of slide around, and we can see how that'll change, and we can see the average. I also think if you completely disagree with any of these, voicing that is great. And also, if you think there should be additional themes or they should replace one of them, that's also super valuable as we update them. So
Are these like priorities in reference to each other or just generally? Sorry.
generally would be my response.
So economic encouragement seems like it would is where people really start to listen. If you can somehow affect their pocketbook. Seems like the economics of how you do that is really important to me.
Yeah.
Incentives, which is the word I was looking for. Not cash out incentives, but just generally incentives for doing the right thing.
Yeah. I think we can move on. And again, I think it'll be
Make sure,
interesting
I don't
to
know.
see
Yeah,
how the whole county responds to these themes. I'm sure there will be differences. This again, almost an impossible question. Fully recognize that. As Tori said, full sentences don't need to be top priority. But we're working on a vision document here, and knowing what you want to see, especially in combination with the rest of the county, is really helpful. So any response to this is super helpful, and I acknowledge how difficult it is to answer this question.
It could be, a specific goal. A large goal, or maybe thinking about a place in the state or around the country or the world that you would like.
Right.
Like,
Trying to think of the name of the town George Jetson lived in.
It's hard enough to figure that out for Wolcott, so I'm not sure about Lamoille County. Transportation. Buses, so many people can't get out. Automatically driving buses, those will be here. Golf car,
In Lamoille County.
yeah.
Unpopular opinion, but like commuter rail along our new rail trail.
That was that unpopular.
Because people love the rail trail,
Oh,
but it was a railroad bed once, and I think that it would be interesting to put a light commuter rail.
why not? I mean, people just get out of the way. I mean, it's got sensors,
Yeah.
this device, so it's not gonna run into people, but in order to get out of the way. Yeah, I think it's a perfect place for new. It's not gonna be a train. It's gonna be a rubber tire or something that just floats along on the existing trail, maybe.
So what do you want to put in here?
I want one of, not Musk's automatic driving vehicles, but
You want
somebody's.
automatic.
Well, I mean, I think I don't know, it's Michael's idea about using the rail trail, and certainly there will be taxis, driverless taxis all over Lamoille County in 2 years.
Autonomous mass transport.
People own the cars, they're just rolling around like.
Just a pack of dogs.
It's so machine, maximum was that.
So autonomous mass transport.
Sure, or just paying attention to transportation, nothing else.
I don't want to take up the board's time, but I do want to hear more about your theory with the 2-year taxi plan, because it just is incredible.
They just, Tesla has permission now to use the self-driving thing in all of China.
Well,
All of China has the, whatever it is, FSB, I don't know what it is. Yeah, they just got permission.
Hmm.
And it's, the software's there to do it. There's gonna be people in the cars for a while.
I just think that 2 years for Lamoille County to generate that kind of need and not have the dependency of their own personal automobile. 2 years is aggressive.
Yeah, is that,
25 maybe.
Well, technologically, it's going to be here.
Yeah, the capability, I just.
So what would prevent it from being used in Warren County?
cost?
Cost and people, well, I think there's some psychology to it. I mean. I certainly wouldn't want to, I wouldn't give up my personal automobile.
Oh, no, I mean, yeah,
And if I have my own, I'm not gonna wait for a taxi. I'm just gonna drive my own.
you know, some of those people though that I deliver Meals on Wheels to that just can't get out, they really could just order a car to come up and get them and take them.
And that would be useful.
But that's a small number, yeah.
also is interesting because it seems like, one reason for the shortage of public transportation options is sometimes people aren't available to drive the buses.
Mhm.
So.
Yeah.
Might be nice to have the job available for somebody, but it'd be available more if someone wasn't needed.
I see a need in Wolcott or surrounding areas a little bit for some kind of a bus that you could call and I mean, the existing service doesn't allow somebody up in the hill to say, come and get me, right?
You know,
Do they,
that's what they did.
can you call them up and, I don't know, I should know.
Rural.
RCT?
Yeah.
That's it.
So they will come to, oh, good.
I don't know how, like, come in 15 minutes or come.
No, I didn't realize that, yeah. but rigs can get smaller and more efficient. But, and so it doesn't have to have the same overhead.
Yeah, the electric car is an interesting opportunity in that, given the low maintenance costs, low holding costs.
Yeah.
You just want to be careful on your dispatcher and route planning end.
Yeah.
I think maybe to a previous point, it seems like there's a vision to have a primarily, not maybe not even primarily, but preserve some of the ruralness of Lamoille County while also acknowledging that village centers exist and are important in house important institutions and economic areas. Maybe that's a bit of a gross simplification, but that's kind of a sense I got from hearing the conversations earlier. So that I think that's a big part of envisioning Lamoille County.
And I did read something a few years ago about the Vermont population, and we were described as being fiercely independent. And so in that way, you know, I'm not gonna pay somebody to change the brakes on my car because I have 2 wrenches and you know, 10 fingers, I can do it myself. You know, so that the public transport and the dependency on others thing, I think that especially in rural areas, there's going to be a large uphill battle in the psychology of some of the dinosaurs that live around here.
Even though after a while you'll have 9 fingers.
I'm doing good so far. Yeah, I just did.
Oh, meals, food. I think as a general topic, food, more farmer, more gardening locally, food production. I think
Locally grown food.
yeah, I think food production, if we hit some tough times, food production is gonna be really tough. You can't start a garden and start growing things if you don't know how. You get out there and dig, but nothing, you won't get anything. The other thing is with respect to food, different towns, Marshall probably has it, but Worcester has the town hall gets converted, on Wednesday every week. 30, 40 people come in, volunteers provide food. So you get this gathering of people of all different types every week in Worcester. We could do that in the local Methodist church if we had the volunteers, if we had the support from the community. So in general, I think food is a really big issue for what we need to think about for the future.
Mhm.
Bring people together every once in a while.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody loves a meal.
Well, great. This last question is perhaps even more open-ended than some of the previous ones, and if you don't have a response to it, I guess that means we did a pretty good job. But any important topic or issue or really anything that you feel like wasn't mentioned that you feel strongly should be something that we're aware of as we update the regional plan. So very vague, but if something comes to you, please let us know. And that's the last question also. So thank you very much. Well, great. Doesn't seem like there's any responses to that one as of yet. As I said, that's our last question. So thank you very much for bearing with us as we went through this for the first time and tested it out. Your responses were great and the conversations were really thoughtful and we appreciate that. But that's it for our survey. And again, I really appreciate it.
Thanks for
Yeah.
presenting this.
Thanks.
Certainly.
Okay. Any other business anybody wants to bring up? We have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make your motion.
I'll second it.
favor say aye.
I feel like I've done my job. I am so sorry. I really just blew it off.
You made the minutes at least, though.
Yeah, that's good.
President, we're not throwing you off.
No, I'm not. If you look at the town report, I'm not on the planning commission. Who's to put me back on? Still in the woods, Jim?
I went out, I had a few pine trees. No, I've had this since 2008. It went out, then,